Well, the Big D is back with a NASCAR street racing. Yes, we are street racers on the streets of Chicago. But before I bring in today's guest, please subscribe, like, and share the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page. Sorts of content out there. Also, check out the Big D podcast for all the audio listeners on Spotify and Apple. So, joining us from just north of San Diego, Brian Twiney. Did I get that name? Did I get the name right? I've been practicing all day.
Yes, you got that perfect.
Yeah, Brian is a NASCAR bettor, Bet Sports, Fantasy Life app, 4 for 4 football, DL football, Bleacher Nation. What else do you do?
So I write content for Bleacher Nation, NASCAR pieces, and then obviously the main thing I do with my buddy Kyle is we record the Angle of Pursuit podcast, which has transitioned to an all NASCAR, all day type of thing where we go over each race each week and we bring you our best bets before practice and qualifying, and then come back and give some DFS plays, and then add to our betting card for the upcoming race.
Yeah. But you and I both know Kyle.
That we
So
do.
So obviously thinking back to last Sunday's race in Nashville, Ross Chastain, didn't wreck anybody and prove he could actually win on a normal track because his first two wins came at Coda. Well, we know what happened the last lap in Talladega, where the only thing that's the only thing that makes sense the last lap of Talladega is it's the last lap of the race because you could be wrong
Exactly.
and win.
Yeah, I was excited to see Ross Chastain do what he did, and even after practice and qualifying, though, I gotta say I missed the boat on betting him early with the good lines, because I think he opened at like 12 or 14 to 1 to win that race. And as much as I like him, I mean, I have a Watermelon Man hat. I've bet him numerous times this year. The string of races that he had put together heading into that last weekend did not show any confidence for me to get him, on the betting board. And then even after, like I was saying, practice and qualifying, showing that type of speed, I was still skeptical that he was going to be able to stay up front and avoid contact. And lo and behold, he did. He was the best car all day. It was nice to see him get back in victory lane. And like you said, win on a traditional oval, not in some weird race that anything can happen, or by wrecking people in order to get it done.
Well, to be honest, I wasn't worried about Ross Chastain starting the race. I was worried about Ross Chastain ending because seeing with how he ran at Nashville, I think he was second in that first race there in 2021 when Kyle
Yeah.
Walsh. But there are certain tracks where drivers fit, and for whatever reason, Ross Chastain loves concrete. He always runs well at Dover, always runs well at Nashville. Maybe they should make him the concrete watermelon farmer.
Hey, the watermelons do smash good there, as we got to see this last Sunday. So I mean, I'm sure he'll be looking forward to the next time they hit Nashville.
But it's weird. The last couple races at Nashville have been the same because Toyotas have looked good early, but the Chevys ended up winning because you think last year Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex dominated early, and then Chase Elliott ended up winning the race. And guess what happened this past Sunday night? Toyotas dominated early, and guess who smashed the watermelon and took home a guitar?
Yeah, I mean, I will say though that Martin Truex Jr. he continued his surge in the 2023 season. I mean, he was really. I mean, yeah, Denny Hamlin led the second most laps in 81 to Chastain's 99, but to me, it was Truex who was the second best car during the race, and I think that really, kind of leads us into Chicago. There's no surprise that Martin Truex Jr. is among the favorites for this weekend's race, being a road course maven, showing what he did at Sonoma a couple of weeks ago, which I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back. I hit him early in the week, got him 33-1, and we walked away with a huge profitable weekend from Northern California.
Yeah, because Truex, I mean, for a while, when NASCAR only raced, what, 2 or 3 road courses, it was Truex, Chase Elliott, and everybody else on road courses. And I
Yep.
mean, Truex used to be the Sonoma King. Now it's gone all over the map, but maybe it's just the year where, like, the veterans reign supreme on road course. I mean, of course, or the Toyotas reign supreme
The
on road course.
Toyotas, yeah.
We saw last year where the Toyotas were so anemic on road course. I mean, I don't remember Gibson even running top 20 at Sonoma.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, it's been interesting to watch the kind of evolution of Toyota just in 2023 as a whole, even on other type of ovals and like the 1.5s and then the super speedways. Because last year I felt like Toyota was probably the worst manufacturer in the next gen car in terms of finding consistent speed at different tracks. And this year they've definitely leveled the playing field. I feel like it's Toyota and HMS are really kind of the top two groupings. I mean, I'll just put Toyota in there because they only got 6 cars. But yeah, it's been fun to watch, and in my opinion, I'm not taking too much away from what we saw in 2022 in the first season of the next gen car when trying to look at and prognosticate what we're going to see this weekend in Chicago, because the car itself has overgone numerous changes just from last year alone, and then even in the past few weeks where they've added the safer like structuring to the sides of the car after the Kyle Larson crash where he wrecked, I believe it was Ryan Preece. He totally demolished the sides of the car. They're taking stuff in and out of the hood of the car to add more crunch, which we got to see firsthand last week when Ryan Blaney smashed into a concrete barrier wall. So for me, just looking into this weekend, I'm definitely more interested in what have you done for me lately and what have you looked like in 2023. And so, like, I think it's another weekend where it's going to be the Toyotas and maybe the Hendrick guys that are leading the pack.
So, with NASCAR heading to Chicago, which will mark the halfway point in the season, after this week there will only be 8 races left in the regular season.
Oof.
Who have been your standout drivers the first 17 races so far in 2023?
I mean, you got to start with William Byron. I think overall he's been probably the most consistent guy from any garage that we've seen. I mean, he's consistently running near or inside the top 5. Even last week, he was inside the top 5 pretty much the entire day until Kyle Larson, his teammate, passed him on the last lap. Um, it's been cool to see him actually take charge of that HMS garage with Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman both missing multiple races this year, and Kyle Larson basically being a freaking minefield of races when you look at his finishing results. And then I think the other guy has got to be Tyler Reddick. If you take away the actual finishing numbers from what he's done, he is bringing speed to each and every track that we've got. And if they can just keep the damn tires on the car or, prevent like pit road problems, like I think Reddick is by far a top 5 competitor each and every week. And especially this weekend as we head to Chicago.
I'm with you on Byron. I'm with you on Truex. I mean, if 2311 Racing could just avoid pit road entirely, they might have a better chance of winning race, because every other race I see Bubba in contention, I'm like, oh, he's got a 14-second stop. Oh, 45's got a
Exactly.
tire issue. 23's got a tire issue. The 45's losing its tire. And I'm
Yeah.
like, of course, this. Because Tyler
Right.
Reddick won stage 1. I mean, nobody remembers it because they only remember Truex and Ross. But Reddick won stage 1, and I'm like, Tyler Reddick's going to win this race. And then all of a sudden his tire falls off the car, and I'm like, oh, no. And of course, my fantasy team was, I don't want to say at that point.
Yeah, I like um it's been really hard to, especially from a bettor's perspective. You see the speed that Reddick brings to the track each and every weekend, and even the sports books have become attuned to the fact that they can no longer lay long lines on him because he's good everywhere so far this season. After the first couple of races, I'll give him, the growing pains of jumping into the 2311 car, but since, Las Vegas, where he came on a little bit stronger towards the end of the race, he's been incredible. Like again, it's going back to just execution during the race. And I think these road courses where there's there's no stoppages for the pit stops, it takes away a little bit of the risk, because if he is fast and he can jump out to a big lead like we saw Truex do, they can suffer a longer pit stop maybe and still be able to maintain track position. Whereas on the ovals, that's a little bit harder to do, and that's where they're really getting hurt.
I mean, Tyler Reddick made an extra pit stop in Coda and won the darn race.
Yeah, exactly. Like if it, because of the speed, and as long as it's not something as dramatic as losing an actual tire, he definitely has the equipment in order to make up for those types of mistakes.
So unfortunately, I mean, they're all guys who have performed and guys who have underperformed through the midway point of the season. Who are a couple guys who have underachieved this year?
Well, I mean, I'm going to start. The clear favorite in this category has got to be Chase Elliott. Yes, he missed a bunch of races, but he had a good run, good strong run in Nashville, and he's looked a little bit better of late. He came on strong late at Sonoma, but even since the beginning of the year, he just hasn't looked like the same dominant force that we had seen in the past. And to me, he's more of a top 5 car than a top 3 race winning car on a weekly basis right now. And multiple people have been talking about this on socials and via Twitter and all this type of stuff, but it'll be interesting to see how aggressive he and his team get as we close out the regular season, knowing he's probably going to need a win in order to get into the playoffs. And this is not something that they're used to out of that camp. So it'll be fun to see how Elliott kind of changes his mentality on a week-to-week basis, and especially going to Chicago, where we all know Chase Elliott's been the road course king. And then I think the other guy for me, I don't know, he's come on strong late, like the last couple of races, and I actually kind of like him this weekend, but I think it's Christopher Bell. He went through a period in the middle of the regular season, right before we got to the little break there, where he just wasn't bringing the same type of speed that his teammates were. Even Ty Gibbs was showing a little bit better than he was for a few races. And then, last week he looks a lot better. He's running inside the top 10, but I think Christopher Bell coming into the year was one of my favorite guys to potentially compete for a championship. But among the competitors for that you would have expected, I think he's kind of been a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, and I've seen Bell. Yeah, Bell qualified 22nd in Nashville. I'm like, Bell should have been better than that. Of course, there was split qualifying, so that was more a crapshoot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could have cherry picked the obvious choice for most disappointing, who has got to be either Chase Briscoe, who has been absolutely atrocious. He's driving like he's got an anvil attached to the back of his car, or Austin Cindric, who has completely fallen off a cliff since winning the Daytona 500 last year and really hasn't shown up even at these road courses. Yes, he did good at Coda, but I mean, outside of that, he has been nowhere to be seen at any race so far in 2023.
I mean, Stewart Haas has been no well this year. I mean, I mean, other than Kevin Harvick, I mean, Eric Almirola seems like he's in every other accident I'm seeing. I mean,
yeah.
For some reason, the 41 car is distinct from running well right now, whether it's Cole Custer and Ryan Preece. And no matter who Chase Briscoe's crew chief is, I think he's stuck in about 28th spot every week.
Yeah, and last week it was even worse. I mean, he was getting passed by the back markers of, I believe the Live Fast Motorsports car driven by Josh Bilicki was able to pass him. And I mean, that is not good when you're driving an SHR car and you're getting passed by those guys just on pure speed. I don't know if it's setup or if it's just driver, but SHR has definitely taken a step back in 2023.
And I'll make this last one easy. How about two guys with the same first name, Austin Cindric and Austin Dillon? Let's see. Kyle Busch has won 1, 2, 3 races here and looks like a championship contender. Austin Dillon, where have you been? Where have you been?
Yeah, what's interesting about that is that I don't think any of us would have considered Austin Dillon like a top 10 driver in the sport. At super speedways, he's always kind of popped. He's been a popular choice for top 10 or even a potential win. I mean, one of his wins coming at, I believe it was like the Coke 400 a couple of years ago. But overall, I don't think that team has been as good as what people actually even perceive with Kyle Busch winning 3 races, because in weekends where he hasn't unloaded well and he hasn't looked good during practice or qualifying, the car hasn't really driven well during the race either. Busch has struggled to keep it inside the top 10. He's also still continuing to have his typical issues on track where he's making contact with people, or if in the matter of last week, the one wrecking Ryan Blaney where he ran into him because guys were checking up on a restart. Like, yeah, I think the 3 wins are definitely masking the kind of disappointment that RCR is going through with having a top tier talent like Kyle Busch in one of their cars.
By the way, Austin Dillon's wins throughout his career. Talk about Ross Chastain's lucky wins. Let's see, Austin Dillon's wins. He won the Coke 600 when Jimmy ran out of gas. Won the Daytona 500 by basically all but shoving Aero camera out of the way. The fluky Texas race in 2020 when he got the perfect caution of a lifetime. And then Daytona last year where everybody wrecked.
Exactly. And there you go. Basically all super speedway type racing.
Oh, luck crack fest.
Yes.
So obviously, first time this weekend going on a street track to Chicago, Grant Park. Do you think this is one of NASCAR's craziest ideas, most insane ideas, or greatest ideas? Because I have no idea because I don't know. And then secondly, how do you think this weekend's going to play out?
I think there's definitely an argument to be made by both sides there to say this is one of their craziest and maybe stupidest ideas, but also one of their best.
Wait. First from a NASCAR standpoint and then a driver standpoint.
Okay. I think it's a great idea. Like, in order to grow a sport that is kind of mired and it's stuck in the mud in terms of trying to garner a new fan base, you have to expand out of your comfort zone. And this is the perfect situation for that. And the perfect, example of getting out of what is the traditional NASCAR type of thing or stereotypical type NASCAR race where it's all at tracks down in the South, where the sport has been established for years and years and years, and jumping into a major city like Chicago, where you wouldn't normally see a NASCAR race going on, except for, they used to go to Chicagoland. And then specifically jumping into a street race, which we've never seen before. I think that's a perfect marriage of firsts for the sport, because you're going to bring in fans that have never watched a race before by putting it into the inner city. And all you have to do is get, maybe 5% of those people to be like, hey, you know what? That was fun. I want to check it out next week. And that's how you grow the sport. And I think it's very similar to what Major League Baseball is doing with the pitch clock and all that type of stuff, trying to speed up the games, where it's getting the traditionalists like myself, even for baseball, to be exact, to kind of understand the sport won't survive amongst all of these other things if you just continue to stick with the old normal crap that has just been going on forever. So I think from NASCAR's perspective, I think it's a great idea. I think it's thinking out of the box type of thing, but I think it's also opening Pandora's box to future potential races at other cities that wouldn't normally have hosted these type of events.
I mean, we've seen F1. We've seen Miami host F1 races. Las Vegas hosting one later in the fall. I mean, if this race runs okay, why can't New York? Because I remember back in the day when Bernie Ecclestone, when he ran F1, tried to get street course races on the street on New York.
That, having family from out there, having lived in New York, I gotta say, I would definitely be interested to see them try to run a race down in New York City, because that place literally never stops. So it would be an interesting logistical nightmare to try to see how they would figure that out. But I think it'd be fun.
They could start the race on the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh gosh, yeah. And let me tell you from experience, driving on the bridges out there on the East Coast, like New York and Pennsylvania and all that type of stuff, the lanes are narrow as hell, and there would be lots of side scraping and tire walls getting on rubbing, and it would be a fun race to watch for sure from a spectator perspective.
Well, I mean, you remember the F1 race and not F1, the IndyCar race when they run across the bridge in Nashville. That would be even crazier, maybe.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Now, from a driver's standpoint, what are the advantages of running in Chicago, running this race?
I mean, honestly, I'd be worried if I was a driver.
Yeah,
Never
yeah,
having driven.
that I'm gonna eat concrete.
Yeah, like never having run here, having zero practice time actually on track. And iRacing is great. I dabble in iRacing. I think it's fun, but I don't care what type of simulator you have. There is nothing like actually being out there in the weather. Temperature degrees is going to change. You're going to have other cars around you. You have to figure out how you're supposed to get into the corners. What arc are you supposed to take? And I think the course layout itself presents so many opportunities for contact and wrecks and spins. I mean, we have 7 90-degree turns coming off of straightaways here, which is the most of any road course that we've had in the sport. And this is coming from a sport that normally turns left on banked corners. So I mean, the I'm excited to watch the race from a driver's perspective. I would be extremely nervous as to how these things are even going to race. And then what's actually going to happen when you have multiple cars on track battling for position, especially coming to the end of stages, or at the end when you're each going into turn 7, which looks extremely narrow, and you're trying to go too wide, or you have somebody dive bombing you. I mean, how many cars are going to get spun out here? So I'd be extremely nervous if I was a driver.
Do you think Chicago could potentially be the most chaotic race of the year? Because you think of chaotic races as Daytona, Talladega, or now Atlanta. Could Chicago be more chaotic than all of them?
I think there's definitely a possibility for that. And I think that's all predicated on whether or not the car who is in front or the first couple of cars are able to run away with it or not. Because if you have, say, like Sonoma type situation where Martin Truex Jr. builds a 14-second lead, or Tyler Reddick is out 10 seconds on the second place guy, I don't think you're going to see as much aggression from the drivers, like especially those just looking for a race win. But if the field is a lot more crunched, like we see at the sports book right now, with I think it's 4 guys inside the 8-1 number, and then you got it's like 10 guys all within like 15 or 18-1 to win the race. Like if you have a handful of really good cars, I definitely think we're in for a chaotic event. And I don't think it'll get quite to the level of what you see at Daytona and Talladega, because there you have the 5 to 6 car wrecks that happen when they're all battling for position. And here, because they'll be going into lower speeds into the corners, and honestly, that's where you're probably going to see the contact and the wrecks happen. I think drivers will be able to kind of avoid that, or at least slow down enough to avoid the massive pileups that we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is not going to be a Watkins Glen or Coda reaching high speed. Even Road America, this could be more of a Sonoma speed. I heard like top speed to be like 140 inch.
Yeah, and I think that's on the backstretch after it's like after they get out of turn 7 or turn 8 or something. So yeah, I mean they're definitely going to get into the 100, like the low 120s, 130s. But the concern, though, is when they're diving into those corners where they're having the downshift multiple times. I mean, you got guys like Ross Chastain, who they like to dive bomb and they like they like to break late. So that's where the issues may arise, especially coming to the end of stages or the race end.
Are there any tracks, whether it's F1, IndyCar, sports car, you even comparing it to Chicago this week, or is this its own separate entity?
Well, I can tell you, like personally, I try not to watch F1. I call it hashtag race to turn one, just because as soon as Max Verstappen jumps out to a lead, the race is over. So I get way too bored with that. But I will say, just from my limited amount of research on that, I think Monaco makes a lot of sense, just because there's a very small amount of passing zones there, and the major difference too is that with NASCAR they don't have that built-in DRS stuff where you can just turn on like a power boost to pass somebody on a straightaway. And so, we're talking about the race possibly being chaotic. I think it definitely could lend to this similar type racing where we see at Monaco, where it's a lot of follow the leader. And then it's in the corners, though, here, differently than what you see in F1, where the passing is going to have to occur, because on the straightaways, these cars are just not built to pass each other in dirty air and that type of stuff.
Yeah, maybe. And plus, generally, Lewis Hamilton's not going to outbreak Checo Perez, but somebody who's good under braking like an aging Allmendinger could potentially beat somebody.
Yeah. And what's going to be really fun for me to watch is that some of these corners are very narrow, where it looks like maybe two cars are going to be able to, like, they might be able to go too wide here. And so it'll be, honestly, I am excited just to watch it, because there are so many unknowns this weekend. As a bettor, I'm definitely going to be very frugal with my bets at the sports book. Like, I'm not going to have heavy exposure on anybody, even after practice or qualifying. And I may just sit back and watch this as a fan. But overall, I think this is a great thing for the sport. I don't care what people say about, this stupid, they're going street course racing, blah, 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 and whatever. I think it's fun. I think it's great. I would love to see them take one of the two Las Vegas races, if this one is successful, and parlay the F1 weekend into potential Las Vegas street race for NASCAR. Take one of the two Las Vegas races that we got on the oval and put one on a street race, because I think that would be sick.
I've got a better idea. How about you take away the Texas race? That might be the worst track on the circuit.
Yeah, the Texas Oval is kind of garbage for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but I don't know how much of that is the car or if that's the track. Like,
it's 100% the track.
Yeah, it's the track. I definitely think.
Look at the first two. Look at the Kansas races.
Oh, the Kansas race this year was incredible. That was awesome.
Unless. So before we get into your bets, I do want to ask you two more questions. One, we saw Ryan Blaney go into an unprotected wall on Sunday, and I was just thinking, we've seen NASCAR put in so much time, so much money into this new call, but yet Kurt Busch's career ended due to a concussion. Alex Bowman and Noah Gragson both missed races due to concussions. And after seeing Ryan Blaney hit the wall without any safer barrier or tires, I was thinking, hey, I hope he's racing on Sunday.
Yeah, true.
One day, because he won the first Rover race. Well, we know why, because Jimmy and Truex wrecked on the last turn of the last lap.
Yeah.
But B, do you think this next gen car is safer than the old car used to be?
I mean, I've really been diving into NASCAR for just the past couple of years, so I can't speak to what the older car used to say, but what I will say from when I used to watch the sport back when I was a kid, those cars used to look like my Hot Wheels when I would smash them with a hammer when they got in wrecks. So to try to say that these next gen cars are less safe than what the older cars are, I think is a complete misnomer. And yes, guys are suffering concussions, but I think that's a result of many different factors of being, the cars are a little more rigid to hopefully prevent some of the, compaction of the bodies, of the framing of the vehicle. And then there's definitely something to the Hans device where these guys are literally attached to their seat. So there's less movement essentially for them to go. So I almost feel like it's a quicker snap back to hit the back of to hit their headrest, which is, could attribute to some of these concussions. But overall, I definitely think NASCAR is taking the steps to make it safer. And in regards to the safer barrier, yeah, it was a little interesting that they wouldn't have safer barrier on that such a long front stretch at Nashville. But, I've seen people talk about it here in Chicago. They're not going to have room on the straightaways to be turned and go headfirst into a wall going 140 here. Like, you're probably looking at maybe, unless you have a Bubba Wallace type situation where he just forgets to hit the brake going into the corner and completely wipes out Kyle Larson from a couple of years ago. But I don't see that happening. I really don't think we're going to have any issues at Chicago. But overall, I definitely think the car is safer than what we've had in the past. Just they got to figure out some of the things with the head injuries, whether that's adding more cushioning on their seats or more cushioning in their helmets. I haven't seen much on the science of the actual helmets that these guys are wearing, because the NFL each year is releasing new and improved technology to prevent concussions within the helmet itself while also implementing new rules. So I just think as a whole, it's definitely safer than what we've had in the past.
Maybe Radell or one of these helmet companies should create pattern where the Cup drivers are more protected in this area in
Yeah,
case
like
they hit the wall.
Yeah, I definitely think you see it on the driver in-car cameras. The part that actually wraps around their head to keep their head stable, there's too much room there that it's wiggling. Like they need to basically put like a foam insert or something maybe to where their head basically can only rotate and maybe go up and down a little bit. Prevent movement as much as possible outside of the helmet, and then make the cushioning inside the helmet to where it can absorb the blow a little bit better.
And then secondly, we know Chase Elliott, NASCAR's most popular driver, has gone through an injury crazy season, missed 6 races due to a broken leg, then came back and then wrecked Denny Hamlin, missed the St. Louis race. But coming off a top 5, I believe he has 63 points behind 16th place Daniel Suarez right now. So, is Chase Elliott must-win territory? Or B, could he get the top 16 of points if we don't have another Austin Dillon or maybe a Ricky Stenhouse surprise winner this year?
I think he's going to have to win. I know these next 2 races are going to be really big for Chase Elliott, knowing he's so good on road courses. And then we go to Atlanta where he's looked really good on the new layout. But then after that, we got New Hampshire, another flatter, oval that
Tuesday last year.
Yeah, but we know Martin Truex Jr. is going to be tough to beat there. We got Pocono, which is kind of a little bit of a crapshoot in itself because of the long straightaways. It's all about speed. You got Richmond, which is a difficult track to race at. Then you got Michigan, where all the top speed guys. You got Bubba Wallace in there, and then after that we got 2 more road races in the Verizon 200 at the Brickyard, and then we go to Watkins Glen. And then we got Daytona again. So you got Atlanta, Daytona, which are definitely going to be those crapshoot type races where you could get a rando winner like a Ryan Preece or something, or maybe Chris Buescher notches that. And then you have the road courses where Elliott's going to have to play strong.
Yeah, until last week, I thought Chase Elliott was in a must-win race territory. Now I'm thinking, I think it largely depends on this weekend because we're going to know early whether or not Chase Elliott and Alan Gustin are going for the win or going for track or going for stage points. Because the Chase Elliott, if the strategy says pit before the end of stage 1, now I mean no stage breaks may help that because they could potentially have points and track position because I don't expect these guys to pit any more than they have to.
Yeah. Especially with the danger of cautions here. I will say, like, worst case scenario for Chase Elliott is that a guy like AJ Allmendinger, Michael McDowell, or Chris Buescher wins this weekend's race, because then that's gonna lock those guys into the playoffs and then make getting in on points that much more difficult. But I also think that for Elliott, the fact that he's still behind teammate Alex Bowman too in this race, I think is really interesting, because he, like, he's got to pass another HMS car in the points in order to get in here. And Bowman, he's struggled this year too. But I mean, when you just look at overall manufacturers and garages, like, he's going to bring similar equipment to Elliott, and Bowman's been pretty good at some of these ovals that we got coming up as well. So Elliott is in a tough spot to get in on points, where, in my opinion, he's going to need to win one of these next couple of road races in order to get in here.
Well, I mean, if he won Chicago, Atlanta, Watkins Glen, Indy, and Daytona, wouldn't hurt, right?
that is very true, and I definitely think he's on the upswing for sure. Like, he's looked better the last couple of races, but again, like I said when we talked about him leading off the show, to me, he's been more of a top 5 car. Like, he's battling for that 3rd through 5th spot, but in overall speed, looking like race winning speed, there's just, more people than normal have been better than him. Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin at times, William Byron. I would much rather take William Byron on a week-to-week basis right now. Kyle Larson is coming on strong, and I think you would still consider Kyle Larson probably a little bit better than Chase Elliott. I don't know. It's just going to be hard for him to get in on points, and I don't put it past him. He's a great driver, but that time missed has been really, really detrimental to his chances.
Okay, so now I know you have a trivia question for me, Brian. So what do you have for me?
All right, so I actually got 2. So I'll start off with the first one, which is a little bit surprising, maybe not so much, but so since the unveiling of the next gen car in the beginning of the 2022 season, who leads the Cup Series in DNFs on road courses?
Is he a big name?
Yes, I would consider him a big name in the sport. Yes. Definitely a polarizing figure.
Joey Logano?
No, I wish it was Joey Logano, but no, it's not.
Has he won any crown jewels?
I'm gonna say no. If you've watched our content, or if you follow me on Twitter, he's probably the guy I speak about the most, or the team I back the most he drives for.
Can't be Bubba, right?
It is Bubba Wallace.
Well, I mean, your hat gave it away.
Yeah, he's actually DNF'd 5 of the 8 road courses we've run since jumping into the next gen car, which is absolutely horrible. With the next guy, and this one, I mean, I could have done this. He's only been in 5 races, but it's Loris Hezemans has DNF'd in 3 of his 5 races while racing with Team Heseberg. Yeah. It's pretty interesting. All right, and then
let me guess, he doesn't have half the equipment that Bubba gets.
No, he does not. Yeah. So I mean, it just goes to show you, like, the problems that 2311 has suffered through just with equipment, pit road issues. Like, they've had a lot of difficulties on road courses. Outside of Tyler Reddick jumping into the car this year. The second
maybe some could be driver faults, but
oh yeah, for sure, yeah. But Bubba Wallace should not be considered a road course ringer by any means.
Okay, what is the second question?
Yeah, so the second question I wanted to get out here, he's a very popular pick this week, but I wanted to ask you, also, since the beginning of the 2022 season in the next gen car, who leads the Cup Series in top 10s on the 8 road courses?
Michael McDowell?
Close.
Hmm. Hmm. Where? Wait. Has
This
he
guy
won?
drives the same manufacturer.
Hmm. I'm going to be stupefied if it's who I think it is.
All right, let's hear it.
Kevin Harvick?
No, not Kevin Harvick, but it is a Mustang.
Hmm. Has he won this year?
He has not won this year.
That takes away two of my guesses because only two of those calls. It's got to be Buescher then, right?
It is Chris Buescher, and he's actually done it in the last 7 road races where he's finished inside the top 10.
Might be 8 with how well he ran at Sonoma.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's really interesting about that too is his average finish is 10.6 at all road courses over the last 17 since the beginning of 2020. So I mean, when you look at a guy who's been running really strong just this year in general, RFK has definitely picked it up. Outside of that Brad Keselowski guy, who is my arch nemesis in betting, Buescher has looked incredible. He's been great at road courses, and I do not fault anybody for going to the board and hitting him. I believe he's still 20-1. You can find him in markets on an outright. I think is a great number if you want to put a little bit on there. But Buescher to me is you got to wait and see all of these guys practice and qualifying, because if they don't unload with speed, they have zero chance, in my opinion, of winning this weekend.
Okay, Brian. So, who are your favorite bets for this weekend? Spring.
Well, as I just finished off talking about Buescher there, it's hard to get to the market right now because of so many unknowns. So like for me, if I'm going to the sports book, I'm trying to find values that I think the numbers are gonna slip, or this particular one I think could crater, once we get to race time on Sunday. And that's going to be Denny Hamlin on an outright at 30, or you could still get him at 35-1, I believe, at, I think it's Bet365. I got him at 25-1 at the offshore I play because it's the only option here in California. But Hamlin qualified on pole in Sonoma. He ran away with stage 1. He looked like the best car. He looked to have a great car in stage 2, but he got put back by a crappy pit stop there. Kind of ruined his race. He was stuck in between like 10th and 12th. He didn't really show race winning speed late, but in terms of value, I think Denny Hamlin presents quite possibly the best on the board, because this could fall to 10 or maybe even 8-1 if he qualifies in the front 2 rows. And then on the same note, in the top 10 market, you can get Hamlin at plus 135. I think there's value there. But the other one that I'm really looking at is a Christopher Bell top 10, which is over plus money right now. Bell has actually been pretty good at road courses throughout his career. He's quietly been, inside the top 10 numerous times. He's got 8 top 10s over the last 17 since 2020. And he's finished top 10 at Sonoma. He won the Charlotte Roval last year, finished 8th at Watkins Glen last year. And he's a guy who's coming on right now. I know I said he's a little bit disappointing, but the last couple of races, that number 20 car has really started to catch up to the rest of the JGR garage. And if you can get him at 20 or 25-1 to begin the week on an outright, I think that's good. But the top 10 number should not be over even money for him. And to me, that's my favorite bet if I were to go in the placement market.
Unfortunately, Florida doesn't have any legal sports betting. Well, that's the only thing we don't have.
Well, you're like California. We have everything else under the sun is legalized here except for wagering on sports.
But I think if I could bet, I'm looking on the sportsbook, DK Sportsbook right now. You mentioned a couple guys in 20s. How about Michael McDowell at plus 2,800? I mean, we know what he can do road courses, and I think of a guy who could definitely surprise. Would anybody be surprised if he's running up there? I'm not sure if he's necessarily the best winner pick. He might be a better fantasy best top 5, top 10 guy this weekend, but Mike McDowell 2,800.
Yeah, he's definitely a really popular pick this week and somebody to consider. He's been running well. He looked to have something for Truex at Sonoma until, again, pit road issues got him. But when you look at McDowell, it's for me, it's harder to get to him in the outright market. Just kind of seeing the fact that I think he's led a total of 15 laps at road courses throughout his career. And so he's not normally somebody that runs in the front. It would take chaos, which we may get this weekend, and somebody who's, again, he's probably going to be battling for a win in order to clinch his spot in the playoffs. So I don't mind it at 28. That's a decent number. I just can't get there.
And you mentioned one. You mentioned a couple Gibbs drivers. How about one at an even juicier number? I mean, does anybody remember Ty Gibbs used to like dominate road course racing in the Xfinity Series? I know different call, different everything,
Yeah.
but I mean the fact that nobody's got any laps here. Ty Gibbs, give me Ty Gibbs 50-1. Give me Ty Gibbs at 50-1.
I don't hate that number. My only problem with Gibbs is that, we've seen it numerous times, kids with growing pains during their rookie season. And Gibbs seems to be running well on a week to week basis. Like he'll crack the top 10 and then something happens where he slips up in a corner or a veteran gives him the business and, gets him loose coming out of a turn. I don't know. I'm a little more skeptical in what like rookies in particular are able to produce on a week to week basis. And especially at a track we don't really know much about. I don't know. The number is nice and tasty, so I don't mind a very small unit play, but I like him more. If we see him unload quick, practice and qualifying, and he looks fantastic and he's got good equipment, I don't think you're going to see his number fall under that 20-1 number. And I would much rather hit him at plus 2,000, say, to win the race than even, spend my money at 50-1. Yeah, it'd be a nice number to have if that does go nice, but if he doesn't have speed early, he is not at that stage of his career where I think he can race his way to a win in the Cup Series.
True. Could it be a guy maybe you put a few pennies on him at 50 and then see what happens on Saturday morning, afternoon, and see, oh, he qualified 5th. I'll do that.
Yeah, I could definitely see you going back to the well with him. Or, I mean, it does kind of make sense. You go a little bit on the 50-1 number, and then if he looks like absolute crap during practice and qualifying, you mark that up as like a donation to the book. Because that's essentially what it would be at that point.
Do you have a winner right now for this race? Because knowing how chaotic what this is, knowing if somebody loses a tire, fender falls off, the wind blows a tree on the track in the Windy City, do you have any idea what will happen around the streets of Grand Park in terms of a winner?
So I like the Denny Hamlin number. I think if anybody is going to win from like the longer odds people, I have zero interest in actually betting any of the favorites. I just think there's too much unknowns coming into this week to hit any of those numbers. So, I mean, I can't then come back here and pick them to win. So like my pick to win is Denny Hamlin just because I like the value and I think he's definitely capable of doing it. But my pick with my heart is sticking with this 2311 team, and I got to go Tyler Reddick. He's rocking an awesome paint scheme once again, representing the city of Chicago and the Jumpman number 23 on his car. I did this a couple of weeks ago in Charlotte where he ran the MJ North Carolina colored car. Like there was no reason to think that he wasn't going to perform well there. And I think similar case here. I think Reddick can produce a really good race as long as the car stays in one piece, that is.
And his team doesn't get a penalty on pit road.
Yeah.
Because that always happens. Because every time I use Tyler Reddick, either like he gets in an accident or I see a wheel falling off the car or the car all of a sudden hit the skids like it did at Snow, and I'm like, what?
Yeah. So I guess my sentimental pick is definitely Tyler Reddick, but if I'm betting it right now, I'm betting Denny Hamlin.
All right, Brian. Thanks for hopping on today. Hopefully everything goes well, and maybe go out and play some golf some nights in San Diego.
Oh, don't worry. I've already gone twice this week, so I'm definitely living the dream here in summer in sunny San Diego.